So thank you, everybody, for staying with us. I know that you've been through a lot of panels, and we've got a superstar team up here with me to talk about issues of leadership and vision and such things, which we need right now down in Washington, D.C. You might be needed down there. I just yesterday was on the air covering the latest Obama news conference on the shutdown, and by the time I got to the airport, there was Boehner up on CNN at the terminal, so it just goes on and on. So maybe you will impart some things today to inspire those just south of us. So I want to start talking to all of you about innovation. And when you arrive at some place, you've all been other places and you're well known. How do you get the company in line with where you're looking to innovate or where your vision thing is going?
Well, I find that there's two big levers that a CEO has to pull on. One is compensation, and the other is what's on the agenda. You know, people say that people respect what the boss inspects. So if it's on the agenda and the boss checks on it, it tends to get done. And there is a culture at Sprint where there's a particular form for numbers, whether you're looking at revenues, expenses, subscribers, or what have you, and it's in this particular font. And it's got columns, you know, objectives and gaps, words like gaps, and then there's red, yellow, green, which is basically red meaning bad, green good, and yellow means you're kind of on the border. So in terms of, you know, innovating around, we'll call it especially corporate responsibility, goals and objectives, because a lot, for example, to make improvements requires the same kind of commitment from the organization, culturally and behaviorally, as every other number that you look at. So in terms of paper usage, water usage, power usage, all those things, everybody in the company, all of my direct reports and then down, have specific numbers they have to hit. And it's on the review agenda where it's reviewed just like, again, expenses and revenues. And so if it's on the agenda and if it's checked just like everything else, people will innovate around it and spend time on it and make accomplishments around, if you will, you know, what we call our CR objectives in the same way as every other normal business objective.
So that's a little tricky for if you want to step out of the box. How do you step out of the box beyond the yellows and the reds and the greens?
Well, we have every week we have what's called our nukes meeting. And the nukes meeting is just to come up with new ideas. Nothing but new ideas. And we do them around the brand pillars. So our brand pillars are simplicity, value, and corporate responsibility. So lots of the new ideas that have come up, like, for example, we offer something called Sprint Drive First, which is and we offer it free to our customers. When you start driving your car, because distracted driving is a big thing we focus on in our business. Mm-hmm. As soon as the car starts going 10 miles an hour or faster, the phone automatically shuts off. So you can't text, you can't receive calls. It even turns off the alerts so you don't know what text has come in, and the person sending the text says this person's currently driving, or the person making the call, this person's currently driving, they'll call you back. We've come up with new green devices that, you know, phones that use less energy, that don't have chemicals that are let's say, harmful in landfills. Those kinds of things come out of the nukes meeting. So you're right, you have to measure the results. And actually another thing that came out of, we got awards around a certain kind of envelope. We wanted to reduce paper usage. And in our businesses, I hope many of you can appreciate, we send out lots of bills. And so we developed an envelope, which basically is one piece. And so there's nothing to throw out. You get it, you flip it the other way, and you put your check inside, hopefully, and then you send it back, but it saves a lot of paper. So we actually spend time on innovation, and particularly around our corporate responsibility as one of the areas that we spend time on once a week in terms of coming up with new creative ideas. From
mobile phones that can turn off to envelopes. That's good. And so just wow us with just a couple of statistics on cell phone usage. I know that there are more cell phones than there are people in the United States.
There's actually 10 cell phones manufactured every hour for every baby born in the world, just to kind of put things in.
Okay, see, he's got those
perspective. So
wow.
Actually, which is why, you know, getting to green phones, when you think of the potential waste. That's why recycle and reuse. We set a goal for ourselves that we're going to recycle or reuse 9 out of every 10 phones we sell. So, you know, in a year, we'll bring back, you know, 90% of what we sell. We want to do that by 2017. We're about halfway there now, but you know, our industry, just like distracted driving, has the potential for bad, but then we also have the potential for good, and so you try to turn that into a good.
Okay, good lead off for me to turn to Patrick, because in the chemical business, you know, that you're here because you're running a responsible company, socially responsible and such. And so what are your challenges as far as vision? And when you came on, you're relatively new. How did you lay out your vision and get people to go with you?
Well, I think, you know, listening to Dan, I don't. It's interesting how the business you have, Dan, is so close to the consumer. For us, it's a much more difficult communication exercise in terms of people don't know us. First of all, our company's name is generally only known in the locations where we operate, and the challenge for us is a big communication challenge with regard to explaining to the general public that, you know, chemicals are good. I think something that people often don't know is that 97% of man-made things are in need of chemicals to be able to produce them. So 97%. So we're everywhere. We're pervasive. We're in a certain way the industry of industries. With regard to that, when you think about corporate responsibility, we are at the origin of a lot of things, and we need to be responsible through the value chain all the way to the consumer. So we need to create transparency. We need to make sure that people understand what we do, how we do it, not only for the direct customer that will use our products, but also all the way to the end user, because we want to make sure that people understand that a lot of these products that we make that are called chemicals are actually performance enhancers. They improve life. They're about progress. It's about technology and innovation. And a lot of the cell phones that Dan puts into the system are only enabled because of the chemical industry. So moving to the question which had to do with how do you get the team involved, I think very important is to understand. I think the metrics, measurement, and we're a science-based company, so we have numbers in all areas, so that's very easy. More difficult is to understand the culture and how does this company work, what gets people excited. And one of the things that I found when I joined Cabot, I found a very caring company, a very team-oriented company. I found people that cared about their colleagues, but also cared about customers. And when you start getting a sense of that, you realize that there's a lot of raw material here in terms of building this care, creating targets, and making people more, creating more ownership around what we do and how we communicate, and making sure that we do the right thing. Because a lot of our products are going to be in circulation for 20, 30 years. So we have a much longer wavelength, and that makes us also much more responsible through the value chain.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to Stu Thorn, because Stu is with Southwire. He came up from Georgia like I did, and company's very interesting in that it was founded by a man who went to Georgia Tech. He was a Navy captain, I think, all outstanding, but his mom couldn't get electricity down there in South Georgia. And she said to her son, she complained, I can't get electricity down here. So what did he do? Well, he just strung the cable to his mom's house, and voila, this is the new CEO of this unbelievable company that has gone on since those early days.
Yes.
So you were really stepping into quite a legacy, and from only CEOs that have been part of a family, and you were a guy out of the box coming in. So what were your challenges?
I was the first non-family CEO. The founder, Roy Richards Sr., ran the company until he passed away, and then his oldest son ran the company for 20 years after that, and then I came in. So with me, the challenge was to build on the existing culture of the company rather than come in and just kind of change it overnight. And so I think the secret to innovation is listening. You know, Stephen Covey talks about seek first to understand and then to be understood. And so I really did a lot of listening when I came into the company. I listened to employees. I think I invented, just like Al Gore invented the internet, I invented Undercover Boss, because 12, 13 years ago, I would go out and do 12-hour shifts in our various factories unannounced. And it was a way to get to know the culture from the inside out, from the floor level up. We've got 5,500 employees, but 45 of them work out in the manufacturing environment. So if I was going to be able to lead the company, I certainly had to relate to the bulk of the people out there who were working on the production floor. So I did a lot of listening at that level. I created something called Sounding Board, where I got employees on a monthly basis, and I've done it now for 13 years, every month at least. I have lunch with the random floor level people from the day shift and dinner with random floor level people from the night shift. And I listen to them, we talk about the business, but I hear their ideas, and I have a sense of, it helps me keep in touch with the culture that I'm trying to lead. And then there's a lot of listening to customers. When I got there, we have an R&D center, and it was on the other side of the railroad tracks from our headquarters, and the saying was that they would push ideas over the railroad tracks into marketing. Well, by the time they got to marketing, marketing didn't want these ideas. They cost too much, or it didn't really meet a need. So I turned that around and made sure our people were out listening to customers, going to job sites, and as a result, we've been able to innovate very successfully to the point where it now takes 80% less time and labor to install wire in a building than it did 10 years ago before we went down that path. So listening, I think, was the key to tying into the culture, to motivating the culture, and to innovating within the culture.
Which I would think would be particularly important today when with social media, everyone's empowered and they want, as you say, transparency, and they want management to listen to them and feel like they're part of the process, which leads us to Daryl Brewster with CECP, which is the Committee for Encouraging Corporate Philanthropy, founded in part by Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, yes.
And you've just taken over. So, and you fixed Krispy Kreme. Thank you for that, because we have a great drive-through. You've probably been to it in Atlanta on Ponce de Leon Avenue.
Absolutely.
So, but your product is CEOs.
Yeah, and it's just as I listened to Dan and to Stu and the different thoughts, the model I've tried to use is I use the acronym of LEAD, and the L is about listening. And we listened to consumers when I ran Nabisco or at Krispy Kreme to really understand what those external issues are. And as we listen, we get to learn. The E is about engagement and really getting people to have those conversations, those town hall meetings and other situations where we can kind of figure out, that's what we heard on the outside, how do we match that to the inside? The A is about alignment and getting everybody on the same page, and Dan, you talked to that, just so critical. We try to get our whole organization literally on, it's a one-page piece that has, everybody's goals and targets. Because we kind of found that, Moses had that tablet with the wrath of God behind it, and people have trouble following those 10 commandments. I mean, how are you going to follow those decks and big documents that sometimes have? But if we can get alignment, then we can go act. And then that leads to really going out and delivering, all right, and delivering on the results and developing people so we can do it over and over again. So that model we've used, and we did it to launch a bunch of great new products and turn around Krispy Kreme. But it still also works as we partner up with CEOs around the world, because it's about a listening tour. I'm up to about 200 CEOs and experts and CJOs in the field to hear what they're saying, how are they engaging their organizations and company. It's about engaging with folks in conversations. We had a board meeting yesterday, so we always get added engagement from that. And then it's really aligning around new ideas and new initiatives. So we've been able to launch a webinar series now. We're taking case studies, which we've had, and bringing them online, finding new ways and roundtables so we can get CEOs together in specific topic issues and then go deliver on them. So that same model, I think, worked for us in consumer packaged goods, and our sense is it can work in the nonprofit world as well.
Well, talking about your tablet reminds me of Alan Mullally's little circle chart that we've always seen with his scribbles when he took over Ford. It was just that simple.
Yes.
This, and he just scribbled it out on a piece of paper. But so you all have so many tasks, and we just heard many of them. So how in the world do you prioritize, or what's the challenge for you as you figure out what to do, what to put where? I mean, you've got sustainability, you've got just different aspects of innovation. How do you tackle that? Is that just something that comes from your gut, or do you have a team that helps you prioritize?
Actually, it's a combination. I have ideas which I bounce off the team, but the way we prioritize is we take a look at our industry and in what areas could we have the greatest impact. So I mentioned, sustainability and green because of devices and the millions of devices. A wireless network or a telecom network is just one huge computer. It uses a ton of energy, so we focused on carbon footprint. We send out gazillions of bills, so we focused on reducing paper usage. So we chose sustainability. I mentioned distracted driving is another area that is a problem, and we contribute to it. So we focused, on that. The other area that we decided to that we focused on is the area of just accessibility. People with disabilities, hard of hearing or blind. Because of the potential of our technology, we thought we could really make a huge difference. Because of these smartphones and their ability to convert text to speech or speech to text or vibrating alerts and what have you, it can really improve the lives significantly. And in my case, of people with disabilities, I grew up with my maternal grandmother who was blind. My dad is now 92. He's very hard of hearing. So it's also your personal experiences that help, quite frankly, drive what is most important and what you're the most passionate about. Because if you and your team aren't really passionate about it, it's not going to happen. So, but in a nutshell, you take a look at your industry, because there are so many great causes and so many ways that companies can be responsible and improve, lives, livelihoods, the planet. We took a look at what the areas we could impact the most because of the industry we're in.
So let's talk about that with you, Patrick. So as far as corporate responsibility and the things that you talk about, the importance of caring about your company, but where do you prioritize in deciding where you commit to as far as responsibility goes outside of producing chemicals?
So if you think about the chemical industry and the image it has, and there's a lot of work to be done at the level of transparency and education. A lot of people don't understand what we do or how our products get used and where they get used. So I have as a direct report actually somebody who has responsibility for safety, health, and environment, because those are very important functions in the industry and for a company like us. We operate in 21 countries around the world, so you can imagine the complexity of dealing with regulations in all these countries, demands and cultures, customers, and so we need somebody that actually helps to drive and helps me provide some priorities in this field that is very critical. It is almost a license to operate issue for chemical companies. Then on the other side, innovation, technology, this is our business. We need to continually develop new products. It's not at the speed, of course, of a lot of the high-tech industries where you bring out a cell phone in 6 weeks. For us, new products take several years to develop, and sometimes it may take up to 10 years. So we need somebody that actually nurtures, pushes that, because a lot of what our technology does is actually improve lives, provides progress, reduces consumption of energy, for example, or makes products much more performing, which in the end is about continually improving the lives of people. So technology, a CTO, Chief Technology Officer, that's driving innovation, and then ahead of our safety, health, and environment. Those are the two areas that are most critical for us in this area of responsibility.
Well, just as a side note, as you look out into the room, just look at anything. Give me an example of where a chemical is that Cabot has produced.
So an example would be any fabric that's out there that's black would have a Cabot product in it, because we make a black pigment, and so anything that's man-made in black will include a product made by Cabot.
Got it. That's cool. Okay, Stu, let's talk about.
That includes.
Yes, I'm tricked out.
All of us are
All over Cabot.
I like you very much. You're a customer.
I thought I was Neiman Marcus, but no, taking it back. Let's talk about the triggers involved with deciding. You went down there to Georgia and you listened and got involved and did what the leaders of Chick-fil-A make. I think Chick-fil-A, they have to go work the drive-through. to know the company. So, well, what were the triggers for you as you sat there listening to people who thought these are the things that I'm going to commit to as far as making sure this company is socially responsible, or what did the leadership hand down to you?
Well, the trigger for me was just walking into a culture and an environment that had such a great track record of being involved in the community and of doing good things beyond just the economic bottom line. They sort of talked about two bottom lines, the economic bottom line and the social bottom line, and it was important to, the shareholders are real people that I interact with, on a regular basis, 5 of them, so it's not guessing what some group of public shareholders want. I can sit down at the table with them and understand their desires, and their desire was to continue to build the legacy of their father and do things beyond just the economic bottom line. So I thought about that and talking about prioritizing. We were doing a lot of different things, but I thought maybe it would be good to start focusing a bit. So we came up with 3 criteria. One criteria was to do things that were local. I mean, world hunger is a big problem, but we had a limited, we have, like any company, limited money to spend socially. So I decided to leave world hunger to others and focus on local issues and problems. The second criteria that we came up with was not just to give money, but to give effort. Bring sweat equity to the table along with the money, because then 1 + 1 = 3. We have great people from all around the world with great ideas and great educations. Why not apply that along with the money? And then the third criteria was to do things that were not just good for the community, but good for us too. Why not? Because that makes it more sustainable. If you're going to do something good in the community, and it also helps you and your bottom line, then that is a self-funding initiative. So this idea of shared value, Michael Porter, was the third criteria. And we came up, as an example of applying those 3 criteria, we came up with a program that we launched 7 years ago I'm particularly proud of, called 12 for Life, where we bought a factory in town for $1.5 million, put another $1 million into it. So we had a $2.5 million investment in order to outfit it to make products, to do things that we had to do elsewhere around our facilities. But we identified this facility, we grouped these production processes within it, and then we staffed it 100% with kids who the local high school had identified as likely to drop out of school. They were basically going to drop out of school. They had terrible grades, terrible attendance, et cetera, and they became our 100% staff of this facility. It was a joint venture with the school system. The school system put in teachers, guidance counselors. This program's during the school day, not after the school day. And inside the factory, we built classrooms. And we provided mentors. We do provide mentors, which are employee volunteers, and guidance counselors, et cetera. And as a result of this program, we're doing all 3 things. It's local. It's helping the local community increase its graduation rate, and they have done that 10 percentage points since we implemented it. It is certainly something that is successful for us as well as the community, because we are making money off this program. We make $2 million a year off the program, while we've graduated 700 kids who would not have otherwise graduated. And our people are getting involved because they are mentors, they are supervisors, et cetera. So it was a way to kind of meet all 3 criteria and do something that was good for the community, good for us too, in the spirit of shared value.
So Daryl, how important are these type things to companies these days? And we know that the millennials, when they're interviewed, talk about they only want to work for companies.
Yeah. This is absolutely critical today. We're seeing this information at CECP with consumers. Nielsen just came out with a study that 43% of American consumers will pay a premium price for companies they consider have the right values, the values they're looking for. That number's up 22% in the last year. So that's consumers are really interested. We're hearing about the same thing from employees and colleagues who come in. They want to work, particularly among the millennials, really want to work for companies that care. And data we picked up, PwC has done a terrific study on that. There's 3 or 4 different measures of that actually show up higher than salary. And those are questions when I was coming out of work weren't even asked. And now it's a very passionate area, I think, that we're finding the millennials. Catch a Fire just did a study. 5 out of 6 people, more important that they do something to help the world than have professional recognition. So I think we have something here. I don't think it's a passing fad. I think the technology, the global nature, I think our millennial generation trying to make its mark on the world. And I think we have to realize that some of the things we're leaving, our generation here, big debt and infrastructure challenges. I think call them the kids, but the millennials today are really seeing that. So we're seeing that as a real important factor across a lot of companies. And it ties to Stu's stuff that it's, you're doing things in an area that's relevant to you, and similar to Dan's, it's relevant to what your skill sets are. At the same time, it's an area that you are getting your employees engaged in, and that it's okay to make money at it because that's going to sustain it. So we're seeing that as really a terrific kind of best practices that, who's going to solve these issues today? Is it going to be the government? Right? NGOs, I think, are going to play a key role, but I think business has got to step up and do more. That's why Paul Newman founded our group a number of years ago. It's why I, after a bunch of years in the industry, have joined this group. Is, how do we get companies rallied around and collaborate to do more, not in everything, but to focus on areas that can really make a difference?
Right, and so as CEOs, hearing that, you've been in business for a few years, all of you. When did you come to realize, what was the trigger that said you realized we're going to have to do this too? That we've got to do it, and we've got to be responsible, and we've got to let people know that's what we're about. Was there a trigger for any of you? I'll just throw it out there that happened.
Well, I think in our case, basically I think it's the way you're raised and your mentors in business from the time you're young. It's kind of the values that you have. But in terms of what wireless can do, the aha moment was for me was I was new in this job. It was early 2008, and I was meeting for the first time with the head of the wireless phone division of Samsung, G.S. Choi, who then became the CEO of Samsung. And he was showing me all the things that they could make in the next 3 to 5 years. And there was this one project that, and it was this issue of recyclable phones. We're working on this plastic that's made out of corn, it's biodegradable. And we're working on these chips that don't have any mercury or cadmium, which are things that are really bad in landfills, et cetera. And I said, and of course, he's looking for a customer, which is a carrier, because we're really his customers, the ones that buy. And that was on aha. I said, we got to bring that to market. I need you, you need me. And we developed it together and got it to market quickly, this notion. And then we worked with the industry to create Underwriters Laboratories, UL. So if you're buying a cell phone, look for the ULE certification, which means it's, and today probably half the phones have it, which means it's friendly to the environment. And they have different designations, like platinum is the most in terms of everything from energy use to it's not only when they end up in landfills, but are they easily repairable? Because what you want to do is be able to put a phone back in, let's say it has a broken screen or whatever, you could just easily repair it and put it back into the market. Or you could take it apart and take parts of it and reuse them for other phones, even though, let's say, the model has changed. All of those things go into that certification. And so then we worked with the rest of the industry to develop a standard, which now is widespread. So the aha moment for me was just being in that room with this other person in our industry, but in a different part of it. He's kind of working on the art of the possible, and it was, I think, an aha moment for both of us. Now it's still, it's still a work in progress. Customers aren't demanding green phones. So that's why I'm telling you about ULE, because it's. But it's one of those things that if you work at it long enough, it'll gradually. And
you are Sprint is the leader in recycling. What's your wow stat for that? You've got a stat. How many phones recycled every few seconds?
Well, we actually set a Guinness Book of World Records record for the most phones recycled in a week. This is about a month ago, by 2x. And I wish I could remember the number. It's an awesome number, but we we'll buy back your phone no matter who you got it from. Give you a decent price for it, because quite frankly there is the good news is there is now a market for secondary. Right. For secondary devices.
One of the most amazing stories that we had on our show Forecast Earth at the Weather Channel when I really started covering sustainability and people like you and entrepreneurs was one of our correspondents went walking and did a tour of the biggest landfill in the U.S. and the cell phones are they're everywhere. And so thank you for working on that. Patrick, you have said, a few more minutes, then we'll take some questions. Without values, you are aimless. So that's part of the core of getting things done for you.
Correct.
And kind of your guide for where you take your company.
Correct. And it starts, at the personal level, like Dan said, it starts early in life. You get inoculated with values and principles and standards, and so your parents tend to be very formative. So that was certainly something that helped me in life and in business. In terms of what triggered things at the corporate level, for me was the fact that safety became a very big factor. I had a safety event when I was running one of my business where we had an explosion in one of our plants, and we had two people that suffered incredible injuries, and I was running that business, and I felt incredibly responsible for these people, and I started realizing that perhaps the systems, the processes, the demands on the organization weren't prioritized properly, and we started with my team getting together and saying, we've got to do something about it, and it led to the belief and something that I'm still carrying now with me in this new company, that safety is primordial. It's the first thing that matters. Nothing that we do matter if we hurt people, be it our employees, the neighbors, our customers. So the safety has to be a major principle before anything gets done, and we will shut down the plant if it's unsafe. Doesn't matter if there's a financial impact of any sort. So, and this is something that you have as a CEO to drive. People will watch you, and if you are not caring about safety, people will not care about safety. And so for us in the company, it starts at safety. There's a lot of other drivers. There's a lot of values and principles that we follow, but safety is number one, and then it goes into environment, it goes into corporate social responsibility, financial responsibility, and caring for the for our neighbors wherever we operate.
Do you, as you do carry out all of these duties, do any of you think about your legacy? I don't know, most people that work, we're not really asked about our legacy, but you always ask CEOs that question. So do you think about that?
I actually talk to all of our employees about legacy. I talk about rocking chair moments, these moments that we're doing something as a company together that we can look back at later in our careers or later in our retirement when we're sitting on the old folks' home porch and in our rocking chairs and think about something we accomplished earlier in our career that had real meaning. And so those rocking chair moments are something I look for all around the company. But my legacy, you all saw the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, and he got a chance to see what his little town of Bedford would have been like if he had never lived. And it turned out it wouldn't have been quite as nice, And I think that's the legacy that I'm after personally, and also one I'm after for my company, Southwire. I want to feel like the towns and places where we operate are a little bit better off for us having been there. And I like to think also that the company is a little bit better off and the various stakeholders we touch for me having been there. So, if we can it's not always about hitting grand slam home runs. It's hitting a lot of singles, but having an effect. This 12 for Life I talked about, for example, we've now graduated 700 kids in our county who wouldn't have otherwise graduated from high school had it not been for that program. And that's over a 5 or 6 year period. Well, statistics show that children of high school graduates are much likely to go to high school than children of high school dropouts. High school graduates are much more likely to participate in the community in volunteer efforts than high school dropouts. High school graduates are more likely to raise healthy families than high school dropouts. So you think of the legacy of 700 kids. This is just one thing that Southwire does, but 700 kids who are now high school graduates who wouldn't have been. You think of that legacy, it's going to actually have an echo effect that goes generations out, long after I'm gone, and it's kind of satisfying to think that, together with my fellow employees, we created something like that, and it's a little thing, but the little things add up.
You want to play off that?
Yeah, no, I think it's great to kind of hear these, what Paul Newman called, CEOs who are a force for good. And so often today, CEOs kind of get ranked slightly above Congress. But below used car salesmen.
10%
Exactly.
favorability.
Thank goodness for Congress, right? In some ways. But how many just terrific ways that people are making enormous difference in the environment and all those areas. And I think that is kind of legacies that we're able to lead. The aha moment, I think we have them over time. Like many, my dad was R.E. Brewster. Officially, that was Robert Elmer, but it really, in my mind, stood for Responsibility Brewster, because that's what he would always talk about, responsibility that you had. And if you then go past the rocking chair moment to the eulogy, as Stephen Covey talks about, start at the end and work back, and having given that from my dad, I mean, that was just amazing what he had done in a community where the community rose up and named the local baseball field after him, because he'd been so contributive and put the chair he used to sit in there. I mean, that's the kind of legacy you want to leave. And I think CEOs are in a unique position to be able to do that. They have these incredible companies, these organizations, a lot of pressures, a lot of stakeholders that are out there, but the ability to really make a difference, to be truly a CEO for good, is just so powerful. That's what I hope, and we were able to get some good things, and we took bad stuff out of Oreos and products of my life and reduced trans fatty acids and all. But if we can then take that and multiply it across CEOs, I mean, this is incredibly powerful as you kind of hear those stories. That's, I think, the legacy individually, but perhaps as a group, and maybe we can move above used car salesmen on the rankings. And
Well,
even higher.
I think you guys are at the top for sure, and sharing your values and where it comes from. We get it, that your quality. So let's anybody out there we have time for like 2 or 3 questions from any of you?
Thanks. I'd be interested in each of your views on the balance, given that corporate sustainability and responsibility has a lot to do with voluntary actions, whether it's for disclosure, for business practices, or innovation. On the balance, do you think that regulation and requirements is a hindrance or a help to advancing sustainability progress?
That's a good one. Hindrance or a help in developing sustainability?
Do you want me to try it?
Go for it.
Try this one. It's interesting. There is an approach that would say regulations are a hindrance to business. I look at regulations actually as the sum total of progress of society coming through in rules. Now, these rules are not always supportive of all and every company, but in general, the regulation can have a positive effect in terms of bringing the average up and pushing a lot of companies to deal with situations where perhaps in the past it was voluntary, now it's less voluntary, and I think it is part of society's role to help, and I think it is a help, and there may be CEOs that don't feel very comfortable with this situation, and I may get some darts thrown at me. But I look at it as actually a positive development in terms of what it does, and it can constantly push us to think ahead and be ahead of the regulatory push, and we try to do that as Cabot, looking at things and staying ahead of the regulation, which will eventually bring the whole industry up to a new standard.
One great example is OSHA. OSHA, is dreaded by a lot of companies because they come in there very pedantic and they enforce these rules very draconian way, et cetera. But they've got a program called VPP, where they will come in and partner with manufacturers to help them create a safer environment. And it works. It's very tough to get that VPP qualification from OSHA, but if you get it, you have had to meet criteria that cause you to be considerably safer than you were previously. And we've partnered with OSHA, and we're putting VPP into all of our facilities voluntarily. And it's a great example of where the government isn't just regulating in I gotcha kind of mode, but are regulating in a way that says, okay, here are the regulations. Now let's work with you to help you not only meet them, but exceed them dramatically. And so that's a great example of where the government can be a help instead of a hindrance, still under that umbrella of regulation.
Do you talk about that with hands-free devices in the phone, whether government should make us not use our phone, or you should just come up with the technologies that disables my phone?
Yeah, it's some regulations are good and some not so good, and some of them aren't that informed. So, for example, there's proof that texting and driving is very dangerous. But, by the way, there's no evidence of any kind that hands-free improves safety at all. okay? So, if you have a earbud or what have you, because it's the mental distraction. That is the worst issue. So you have people tending to jump on bandwagons without facts, and then you get regulations that aren't particularly well thought through.
Right.
So I think there are both. One of the downsides of regulation is the cost of complying. The reports and all of these things actually add cost and sometimes make it more difficult to do more as a result. But others are good. So, for example, actually, our Sprint has supported. We actually support regulation in states that are trying to outlaw texting while driving. We will actually give money and support those laws because we don't want people dying because they're using our products. So yeah, there are good. So in other words, there are very good regulations. Sometimes there are regulations that aren't that good. They're more politically driven than thoughtful.
Anybody else?
I hate to mention this, but I happen to notice that all four of you guys are men. And I am too, by the way. Do any of you expect to see your successor be a woman? And if not, why not?
Absolutely.
Are they leaning in, is your question?
Yeah.
Daryl Sandberg.
Well, as the father of 4 daughters, I certainly hope that the next generation will be even a higher proportion of women in the workforce, and in senior executive positions. I think we're going to honor even a few tonight who are people I've known over the years. And so I actually expect that we will see that. And my hope is then the next generation out, that won't be something we even begin to talk about. But I think in the short term, we need to find opportunities for women to be able to really contribute, and people of color, and to bring diverse perspectives to senior positions. I think it's a mandatory if we are going to kind of succeed and grow as a society. Great just to see Japan is coming out with a major program to get more women in the workforce in Japan. They've been lagging, and it's one of the issues, I think, why Japan has been lagging. So I think we do see that, and I hope that would be the case, but I think it's got to be the best qualified people, but love to see a bunch of terrific women in those positions.
I think most of us have gotten the book Lean In right
Yes,
now and
yes.
trying to figure out what people think about Ms. Sandberg's thoughts on that. Anybody else? We have probably time for one more question. Back here.
Hi,
Okay.
Robert Nash, Nash Holdings. Daryl, as a new CEO, what could your firm do for me as a new CEO? Do I start early, or do I, look at it down the road when we have more liquidity after we're trading on the stock market? Thank you.
Yeah, at CECP, we're really focused around helping the world's largest companies. So it's a focus on Fortune 500 type size companies, multi-billion-dollar businesses. Certainly a lot of the principles that we have can be applied to companies of other areas and other size. I think at the right time, there are other people we'd be glad to refer to you who are better in middle market and smaller companies as well. And we'd be delighted to help out, because this is an area we've seen, I think, when first constructed, the idea was lead from the top, but we also need to bring a lot of firms and companies around. And I think in the area of social responsibilities, in many cases, the real leadership is coming from very small companies, the conscious capitalists who are just doing a terrific job. They're outperforming the market, if you want to look at that as a measure. So I think it can happen all ways, but our focus is there, but we'd love to talk with you and perhaps can help you with other firms as well.
Thanks very much. My name is Steve Granger from the Centre for Safety and Health Sustainability. I was very pleased to hear what you were saying, Patrick, about the commitment towards health and safety. I don't just want to focus on one issue, but I'm interested to hear from all of you how much you're influenced by performance metrics of other organisations. Are you more concerned with implementing your own standards, or are you driven by benchmarking against, tables and so on?
Patrick, you want to start? with
Yeah,
that?
so on the safety front, let's pick on that one. We get a lot of data. We actually are able to obtain information from many companies from many sectors, and we see that as a way to see if we're on track. So we believe that data mining, understanding what others are doing is a way for us to continue to progress. And on the safety front, I would say we're in the top 1% of any industrial company in terms of safety performance, and we can actually verify that, we can prove that, and we can show that to our employees. And they feel very good about this. They feel like they're on track. Every accident is still has a big negative impact on the morale of the troops, but they feel that we're continuing to make progress and we can actually prove that we're in the leading position, and we don't think there's many people out there that can do that better than us. So yes, very important to benchmark.
What about you, Stu?
Yeah, benchmarking is absolutely critical. I think with the growth of the idea of sustainability and with more and more corporations sort of reporting more broadly in terms of their performance, not just on the variables that relate to making money, but on things like safety and environmental stewardship and community involvement, et cetera. By having companies begin to report on those things in a more standardized, thorough way, it opens up a whole new avenue for benchmarking that's very useful, and we've been tapping into that pretty heavily as we pursue sustainability. We've gone to organizations that then take our performance and specifically benchmark it against other companies and let us know where we stand in that hierarchy. And it's allowed us to gain some insight as to areas we can do better, where we thought we were doing pretty well and realized we could actually do better. So I think benchmarking is terrific, and I think there's more and more opportunity for it under that umbrella of sustainability.
Anybody else?
I'd add that, in our case, in the area of sustainability, I'm talking about the wireless industry, I don't think we have enough benchmarking. And when I was recently the chair of the CTIA, which is the Wireless Industry Trade Association, the chair doesn't get to do a whole lot, but he does get to pick, or she, pick your top personal goal. And mine was sustainability for the industry. And so one of the reasons we made our sustainability goals public, and when we win awards like, number 3 on Newsweek's list of, America's greenest companies, I will talk about that among my peers to try to bring the industry along, because I believe that collectively the wireless industry, I don't know if we're a little above or below CEOs in terms of, in terms of just perception as an industry, and I think there's an opportunity for us as an industry to in essence, for the pie to get bigger for all of us if we start to become more responsible and focus on the things that we really can do collectively. So I actually am hoping that by us putting our goals out there in the public and talking about it, it'll get the rest of our competitors, quite frankly, to follow suit and try to beat us.
And I would just concur. I mean, from a CECP perspective, but we've seen the best practices of the most successful companies. The CEO is engaged, as we're hearing here today. They're innovating, as we've talked about. They're collaborating, and they're measuring. That which gets measured is what gets done. And I think it's a very important area. It's why we've established the CECP database, which really tracks societal investment from, this year we had 300 companies in the US and abroad who've participated in that, to really understand what the investments are, and then beginning to also understand what the impact of that as well. So I think measurement is right, and I think to your question, the answer is yes, right? We've got to benchmark, and you've got to look at it on the inside and how you're improving against your own history as well.
No dissension up here on the final question. Thank you all. Thank you for your questions. And I think that, Dan, since you like to give quotes, maybe you can provide a closing quote that might fit for our discussion.
Oh boy!
Putting him on the
spot. You've really put me
While
on.
you think about that, why I'll go down the line here. Maybe a book or a person recently, or something you read from somebody that's inspired you that you can reflect on what we're up here about today. Any of you?
I'll give a quote from a woman.
Oh, okay. I knew he could do it.
From a woman, Ann Landers. The true measure of a man is how he treats someone who can do him absolutely no good.
There you go. We'll end on that one. Thank you very much.